We are all welcoming you to another in-depth session here at EGY, Explorations of Gyan and Yoga. So for this weekend, the topic is free will and predestination. The concept is really nothing new. We have been hearing it from the Murli for so many decades. But really, how much of it have we really understood? And furthermore, to what extent are we really using this knowledge to our advantage? Sister Denise, we are all ready to fasten our seatbelts as you will be introducing us to also some new words. Welcome, everyone. Sister Denise?
So this is a complicated issue, which is a philosophical matter that has concerned people for thousands of years in many ways. And we live in a world of science and the scientific angle on reality, where people are still asking themselves, is God playing dice? You know, who's in charge? Are we free? We want to be free. We don't want our freedom to be taken away, but people don't really understand the dimensions of time and space in such a way that you can be on the outside of time and the outside of space. And this is what the Swadarshana chakra is. It's an instrument that enables us to come outside of time and space and look at it from the same angle as God looks at it, which is pretty interesting. So I have put together some material which is called Spherical Thinking to help us understand about free will and predestination in a practical way. And so I'll slowly read through the points and take time out to give some explanations for the first hour, and then we'll go into our discussion with Sister Rose and Sister Vanji, and let's see how far we go. So because it's been posted, you can follow it along, but we are having it up on the screen sharing. So spherical thinking. The image that you can think of in your mind for spherical thinking is the picture of the cycle, but as a sphere. And the picture of the cycle is usually thought of as something rather flat, like a dinner plate, and you're looking at it that way. But just add another dimension so that you're somehow on the inside of this sphere, and all the things are happening, and they're happening to you, but you're also able to come outside the sphere and look at it from the outside. So let's move forward. So free will and predestination. In the face of challenging circumstances, you have 1 second to act. What will you do? So we know that everything in the drama is predestined, and that the only moment where you have freedom is the present moment. As soon as that present moment has gone into the past, you can't do anything about it. It's become history, so you have to let it go. So one very important practice is to be here now, which is made famous by Ram Dass. And we have to practice being absolutely present for the present moment. And the present moment is very fast, and there are many distractions. And where are we at any given moment? usually distracted, and also when a present moment is there, which is a particularly challenging one, it triggers your Achilles heels, your weaknesses, the associations connected with the challenge, and it creates chaos and confusion, so that prevents you from actually being really present and in your power at the present moment, so that you can think very fast and make a decision to act, to speak, to do nothing, to do something. And that puts you in charge of the consequences of that particular challenging moment. So this is the question: what will you do? So your action is preceded by a thought, because thought is instant. A challenging circumstance comes into your mind as a sense perception, something you see, something you hear, something you're aware about, and it triggers immediate associations in your mind and also emotions and reactions. So this is the question: to what extent are you free? So what binds you is the associations and the triggers, which are bound in that action, in that circumstance. And you really are under the influence of your sense perceptions. That's the nature of life. And the practice of Raj Yoga is all about decoupling yourself from these influences and asserting that you are free in the present moment, and that you have the right and the possibility to act, but you cannot claim that right and exercise your power unless you can actually control the things that the circumstance is triggering. And this is why it needs a lot of practice. So we're going to go into the use of this yantra. So the yantra is an instrument of the cycle. So next question: to what extent are you driven by force of mental habits? Now, most people are 100%. And of course, we have to reduce that percentage as the days go by. So your practice is all about a continuous effort to reduce the percentage that you are driven by the force of mental habits. And you are asserting your sense of identity as a soul to displace the force of mental habits. And that's a gradual process. Now, along with mental habits are residual distortions of perception due to long-term trauma. Now, everybody has experienced some or another trauma in their lives. And some people have very big trauma, some people have little trauma, but everybody has trauma. And trauma is like a blow to your soul, which leaves a scar. And this is why we have this word sanskar. So a trauma creates a sanskar. And the sanskar will function and override what you want to do because it's got that power. And what your practice of Raj Yoga is about is to neutralize the sanskara, which came from a trauma, which means your relationship with your trauma itself has to be neutral. And it can't be neutral until you've worked through it. So you have to work through it. All these things take time. Now, to what extent do you know who you are such that you act always according to your essence? So we can say that your essence is the real you, the you who operates in perfect condition before anything ever happened. But because so many things have happened, because the soul is depleted, damaged, corrupted, all these things, you cannot really be who you are. And it's happened over such a long time and to such an extent that you don't know who you are anymore. So in the Murli today, Baba talked about himself as the creator. And people always think, oh, he created the 5 elements and the animals and the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees. He said, don't think about that. Think about how God creates a person. And this is very relevant to what we're doing today. So he creates a person by bringing that person back to a sense of who they are before anything ever happened. That is creation. And the instrument for creation, in practical terms, is this cycle. And this is what we're working with in the sessions today and tomorrow. So let's take a look at spherical thinking. So spherical thinking is a different way of looking at things. You can say spherical thinking, or you can say holistic thinking. Sometimes you can look at it as circular thinking, but then that has other connotations that are not relevant to this. I think spherical thinking is a good word for this. So go back to this image of the cycle as a sphere, that you are at the same time inside, surrounded by circumstances and events, and also with one click of your mind, you can move yourself on the outside of it and look at what's going on from the detached position of the detached observer. And this is the position of God, how God is looking at everything. And our mind, when it's really in our control, we can flip between being inside or outside in a second. And we need to practice using this ability so that we can be almost simultaneously inside and outside. And you can see how it is a spinning instrument. It's very, very subtle. And so we have to think about it a lot and try and practice it in simple situations and gradually get good at it. So you find yourself in a circumstance or an event, and you have to think about it in the context of the larger whole and practice seeing the big picture. Now, some people are big picture people and they just see the big picture all the time. And I'm a person like that. So it's easy for me, but not everybody is like that. So to be a big picture person when you're not, you have to practice it and develop it, cultivate it. And also understand that the big picture is something that's constantly moving and changing because things are happening all the time, all over the place. There are as many events taking place as there are people. And then you multiply that and it's exponential. It's enough to make you crazy to try and think of everything that's happening all the time. But you can understand that there's a huge amount that's happening. And what's experienced by you at a particular moment is just what you can sense through your eyes and ears and what you know. And because we have a very digital world, we can be in a situation, we can have a television view of it at the same time. I'll give you an example. I remember one time I was in Los Angeles and there were riots going on because of the big event that had happened, the Rodney King event. And there were also fires going on. And so I was right in the middle of that in Hollywood where it was all going on. And you could also see the TV cameras on your device and what they were looking at. So you could see it through your sense perception. You could also see it from the angle of various cameras and various commentaries. And then you could also pull yourself out, really zoom out of the situation and see it from the angle of the Raj Yogi, who is a detached observer, watching it in the context of the larger scheme of things. And so it was a very good moment to practice shifting your sense of self from where you are in relation to the event, from being involved, slightly far away, very far away. And you could do that just in an instant. And it all depends on your relationship with your mind, because perception is in your mind through your senses and through other devices and through the spiritual instruments of the Swadarshana chakra. So you think about these things and you practice shifting yourself in that way. Perceive the origin, current manifestation, and ultimate consequence of a trigger event, then act or do nothing. So this refers to the practice that Baba has given us, which is to be the seer of the three aspects of time. So every circumstance arose because of various things in the past. And so you have to be aware of what caused this to happen. And you can predict fairly accurately, and you can understand that not everything can be known, but enough can be known to see why this situation is there and where it's going. And there you are in the middle of it, and how you respond to it actually determines where it's going. Your relationship with why it came about needs to be neutral. Very often people are having an antagonistic relationship with circumstances because they feel it should not be happening. Why is this happening? I don't agree with it. I don't understand it. But the knowledge of the predestined drama, the knowledge of the cycle says, whether you like it or not, it happened. And there's nothing you can do about it, but you better be quick and move to the present moment, because you have to do something and you have to do it now. So get with the program and be aware that what you do determines what happens next. So be in the present and take responsibility for what you do and how you feel, because you can. You're not a victim of circumstances, and don't pretend that you are. So this type of thinking is a key to overcoming waste or purposeless thoughts. Waste thoughts are all these what if only, I don't agree, it should not be, why did this person do that? It's not fair. I have to do something to stop it. All this sort of thing is waste thought, because there's nothing you can do. What you need to do is be very conscious of who you are in the present moment and come into your power. See the big picture and decide what is the best thought, the best act, the best feeling to emerge. And this will dictate where the circumstance goes to in the future. This is called being a master of time and space. So we're practicing to achieve this. This is very subtle. You have to be very fast. But waste thoughts is the one thing that weakens you and makes you experience that you're a victim, even though in reality you're not. But you cannot take charge of not being a victim unless you practice this kind of spherical thinking. So it's recommended. So let's go to facts versus perception. So the way we are educated, trained, raised is to assume that whatever we can see with our two eyes, that's facts. And in spiritual knowledge, we learn that it's perception. It's a visual impression which is being received in the mind. And so while it may be a fact on the outside, from the inside, it's a perception. And you know this expression that we do not see things as they are, we see things as we are. And that's an expression that refers to the fact that all this, what we're seeing, we're actually experiencing not where it is, we experience it in the mind. And when you experience in the mind, you're not experiencing it on a blank piece of paper in the mind, but there's already feelings about it, attitudes, preconceptions, and these take the form of distortions. So that's why we have to be very aware of considering circumstances to be objective reality. So we have to think of circumstances as three-dimensional moving images and sounds which have many associations. And as soon as we perceive them, it triggers all the associations which appear in the mind as well. So thinking of your mind as a sphere, which has received the perception of some trigger situation, and then you have all these associations which are popping around like little clouds, little bubbles that are impacting our relationship with what we're perceiving. So the question is, are you neutral? And mostly the answer has to be no, because these associations tend to trigger negative emotions and pairs of opposites, which carry you away. And so these are called Maya, or storms of Maya. And they can be very slight storms, or just little breezes, or they can be really big things that take you over, and you are completely under the influence of your emotional reaction to the associations that are triggered by your perception. And so what we're trying to do here is to evaluate and determine what we're perceiving, what we need to do about it, in a dispassionate way. So we need to be dispassionate about something that we're very passionate about, which means we have to control our passions. And passions are quite difficult to control because they are the rulers. And these passions are just this accumulation of all the things that have happened and which dictate how we feel and what we think and what we do. And that's called bondage. Bondage of karma, bondage of sanskaras, bondage of sense perception. And the purpose of studying Raj Yoga is to make ourselves free from this bondage. That's the whole point. Sometimes people think Raj Yoga is something else, but this is what Raj Yoga is. It's a very specific practice for a very specific purpose, dealing with a very specific challenge, which is the challenge of being under the influence of our past experiences, much of which is traumatic and hardly any of which is neutral. And so we're trying to achieve neutrality for the purpose of being free, because what we want is to be free. If you don't want to be free, then I guess don't bother to listen to this. But if you're interested in being free, then this is an instrument, and learning how to use the instrument that makes you free. So when we come into Raj Yoga, Baba promises us and offers us something called Jivan Mukti, which means to be freedom in life. And he says, all of our suffering is because you are in Jivan Band, which is bondage in life. So if you want to suffer, if you want to be in all kinds of mental prisons, then carry on. But if you don't, then pay attention to this, because it's a very, very extraordinary instrument to enable us to be free from so many mental, emotional, psychological bondages and limitations that we really don't have to be troubled by. So let's go further and look at the philosophical versus the practical. When we study the philosophical, the information. And when we're studying, we can acquire all of the elements of the study and set them up in our minds and look at it with what we call the intellect. And so we can imagine it and evaluate it and move it around and do lectures about it and so on. That's fairly easy to do. Most of us are pretty well skilled in this. But what we want is to make it operational in practical situations which come up instant by instant. So this is why I say it is insufficient to know at the intellectual level. We have to discern the how and why of all things, mental, emotional, psychological, and physical, in order to make intelligent decisions. So when we study these things intellectually, we understand it very well. And when you're understanding it, talking about it, writing about it, you put the reality of yourself totally on one side and don't deal with it. So what we have to do is bring it into the equation, because we're not really here to talk to somebody else about this. We're really here to talk to ourselves about it. And very often when you're talking to somebody else about something, it's an instrument to talk to yourself about it, because otherwise you kind of wouldn't unless you're talking to somebody else about it. It's an odd thing, but it's like that. So you have a mental response, a mental, psychological, emotional response to particular situations. So you know the instrument, you know what you have to do, how you have to do, and so on. But you have to bring these feelings into the equation, and they're very powerful. So the idea is to work with these things in the midst of chaos and stormy circumstances of the mind. And your spiritual power is the ability to pull yourself outside the storms, feel the storms, experience all of the distress and disturbance without being taken over by it, so that you can do what needs to be done according to your understanding, while all of this major hurricane is going on. And this is the trick. This is the skill. And so the next question is, to what extent are you limited by cultural norms? Now, cultural norms are unfortunately social attitudes which tell you that these storms that take you over cannot be controlled, and that they have to be controlled. So either you check out and stop feeling anything at all and numb out. That's what a lot of people do. And the psychologists talk about these reactions of fighting, fleeing, freezing, or fawning. These are the four things. So either you go into aggressive mode and start being angry and violent, or you run away, or you close down, freeze over, or you start being nicey, sugar and spicy to people who are abusing you, and hope that that'll make it go away. And most of these cultural norms tell you to do that because it looks nice, and it'll probably work. It never works. So the next part is the need for repeated tests in whatever areas you are weak, blind, or deaf, until you become competent in responding both neutrally and with power. So all these storms of Maya, as we call them, that keep coming along unexpectedly, and when you are not ready for them, destabilize you and mess you around, embarrass you, and kind of force you into whatever your mode is, whether it's fight or flight or freeze or fawn. And even though you know better, you see yourself as a detached observer doing the absolute opposite of what you should be doing, and that you're trapped in that and you can't get out of it. And that makes you feel really bad, because when you detach yourself from the situation, you see yourself being totally not what you really are. This is not your real essence, but yet you are performing completely dominated by your coping mechanisms for the trauma, and you are doing your fighting, flighting, freezing, or fawning uncontrollably. And you need to experience this again and again and again, with however much embarrassment and whatever it requires, until you figure out a way of taking charge and controlling yourself so that you break free from this incredibly powerful coping mechanism. And a lot of people call that ego, So people think of ego as a vice, but in many ways, ego is this knee-jerk reaction where you go into your coping mechanism and your self-honor is for the birds, and you are completely not yourself. You're behaving in a way that is absolutely the opposite of your values and your beliefs and so on. And you're doing it. And you do it again, again, again. And it makes you crazy to realize that you're in this bondage, you're in this trap. And this is called, maybe it's a karmic bondage. And what you want is to get out of it. So you need to be very neutral about yourself, very neutral about these incredibly distressing feelings that are forcing you into this behavior patterns, so that you can assert your independence. And this takes a lot of power, because the power of Maya is equal to the power of God. And the power of God plus you is greater than that. So you have to be in your power and connected in yoga with God in a stable way in order to extract yourself from this situation. So this is not easy Raj yoga, but this is what it's about. So let's go to the next. Linear thinking and faulty logic. So we have been trained in linear thinking and faulty logic by a process of brainwashing. I call it brainwashing. It happens from our past karma. It happens absolutely from how we are raised by our parents and families. It is a direct result of our education, a direct result of our religious training, of our the social attitudes and values that we grow up in. It's a direct result of the culture that we got born into. And it involves much in terms of prejudice. It's many different filters through which we evaluate our sense perceptions so that we are totally under the influence of these external, what I call external moral authorities, and I call them toxic because mostly they are based on assumptions, which when you look at it from the angle of spiritual knowledge, they don't really have any foundation whatsoever. So you need to just be aware that you are you've soaked this in to the fabric of your being so that it has complete control over you and that you are not free at all, but you want to be free. And the more you're aware of how much this has control over you, the more you desire to be free, which is a good thing, even though it's uncomfortable. It causes you to make assumptions about what you're experiencing in the world, whatever circumstances there are. And you think it's valid because you're trained to think it's valid. And we have to use this ability to see that it is not really me and that it is not really good. It's really toxic. We have to notice it and deconstruct it constantly because it keeps taking over again and again. Now, spiritual knowledge is the instrument that we have to enable us to perceive this and to extract ourselves from it. But it's very subtle and it's very tricky. So we have to practice and take time to become competent in this. We also need to understand the need to renounce faulty or toxic conventional moral logic. I think there'll probably be quite a few questions about this. Conventional moral logic is all about viewing things as right or wrong. And whenever you, like in our community of Raj Yogis, there are many attitudes that we have been taught. This is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, and you adopt it. So it's another layer along with the education that you had through your parents and your school and your religious backgrounds. This is another layer of it, and it gets you to look at things in a certain way, but it still makes you look at it in black and white, right and wrong, and it includes all of these toxic social attitudes very easily. There are very few people who don't include those and who use Raj Yoga exclusive to those things. And gradually we have to remove the inclusion that we have made just because that's what we do. It's absolutely normal to do that. So it's a process of pinpointing where we're still using faulty moral logic or toxic conventional moral logic, in which you say to yourself, this person is not doing what I think they should be doing. Therefore, I will do something about it, or I will make comments about them, or I will do something to distress them about it. So these are normal toxic conventional moral behavior patterns, and they're absolutely everywhere. And what we're trying to do is get free from them. And this is not an easy thing, because your conscience has been bound to these toxic conventional moral logic processes. And because of that, your conscience has lost functionality. So one of the things we have to do is to cause our conscience to reacquire functionality so that we listen to the conscience and not to the toxic conventional moral logic. And that can only happen when you have decoupled your conscience from public opinion. And public opinion, as we can see from all the way in which artificial intelligence has bound people to social media and public opinion, and they bind people to their weaknesses and blind spots and deaf areas, and make the bondage practically impossible to extract yourself from through the use of artificial intelligence, which is very, very dangerous, but absolutely legal. Anyway, it is possible for us to extract ourselves from that if we want, but we have to get the tools and we have to get skilled at it. So let's go to priorities. You must review your priorities again and again, because your priorities get like kidnapped by these external moral authorities and the activities of algorithms and artificial intelligence. They're very, very expert in taking over your thinking, and you have to be careful. Your priorities are up to you, not up to anybody else. And other people have different priorities. You don't have to have the priorities other people have. And even though the algorithms and artificial intelligence invades your space at every possible opportunity, you have to be vigilant and cut them out second by second. You also have to be very aware of getting influenced by the priorities and preconceptions of others. Because you see, if you don't, you'll get excluded, you will get ostracized, you will get marginalized, you will get put down, you will get name-called. They have all these ways of forcing you into compliance. And you have to be so powerfully in contact with your essence, your real self, that they don't succeed in doing that. So this is the first part of the spherical thinking section that I wanted us to have a look at. And so I think I would like to stop here and turn it over to Banji and Rose for us to talk about this a little bit more. Thank you.
But first, can we have a moment of silence with you? It's also for all of us to take a moment to let it sink and digest it a little bit.
I'd like us to sit for some time with this idea of a sphere that contains everything that happens in time and space. This is the sphere of the cycle of the world. You are in the middle of that sphere. And there are all these influences around you. Circumstances arise and they trigger many, many associations. And it all comes tumbling into your mind like a big tsunami. Rocks and stones and water and whatever. So just step out of the sphere so that you're looking at it. You're looking at yourself. You see the tsunami of associations and sense inputs. Make yourself neutral about it all. Just see it. And know that even though you're there in the middle of that big catastrophe, at the same time, you're outside looking at it like a detached observer. Even though so many emotions are being triggered, you're outside those emotions. And you can be neutral about all those feelings. Feel them with all their intensity, but yet they don't overwhelm you. They don't take away your calm, your peace, which is behind all of that drama. And as the storm abates and passes by, you re-enter your space in the middle of the sphere with your calm, your detachment, your sense of the bigger picture. And the storm has passed. You are fine. You're still here. And the question is, what will you do now? And what you will do now is all about who you are and not about what just happened. Om Shanti.
Sister Denise, I noticed that the word neutral came up so many times. So neutrality, being neutral, is it on the same page as being detached?
I would say so. A lot of people, they think dissociation and detached is the same thing. So they say, oh, I'm detached. What they mean is I've checked out, I can't feel anything, and so I'm a good yogi. That's called freeze or check out or flight. It's one of those reactions. But being neutral is that you can feel the feelings in all of their intensity, but they don't overwhelm you. And you are in charge of yourself and you decide what you're going to do next, and you are in command and not overwhelmed. And I call that neutrality. And you can step out of the circumstance and look back at it using this device of the sphere and see yourself getting totally knocked around by a big tsunami, and you can feel how intense it is, but yet it hasn't taken over.
And the reason for that is because you're powerful.
Yeah. You've been able to shift your position. Instead of being under the waters, you are above it. You just shifted your position, because as long as you think that you're limited to your body, you can't do very much. But once you know that you have a body, you aren't a body, you can be wherever you want to be, because you are where your mind is, not where your body is. And so you can position yourself wherever you want. And if you position yourself outside your body or outside the whole drama, looking at it, but without disconnecting from the feelings, this is power. Because if you disconnect from the feelings, you go into coping mechanisms and reaction to trauma, which is all very bad for you. It keeps you in bondage and you have no control. You're a victim.
In the course of the 1 hour or so discourse of Sister Denise, the thought that came to my mind was, again, there's lots and lots of layers that have been put over you, but over you through the course of 84 births, in the course of the cycle. But then you have to come back to the core, to your essence. And that's still what we are doing. And I find that what has been discussed by Sister Denise is challenging me to check myself. Where am I in all of this?
Well, one thing I would like to mention is that we cannot really tangibly be aware of the layers that have come over us in 84 births. And we can be aware of the influences of the layers of parenting and the family influence, the influence of our schooling and our educators, and the influence of our religious exposure and education, and the influence of our culture and society that we are raised in. You know, these are the layers that exist theoretically because of our karma. Our karma made us get born with these people in this place at this time, you know. So, okay, that's gives us the possibility to deal with all these layers in a tangible way and not just imagine it. You know, I must have been this in the golden age and I must have been that in the silver age and all this stuff happened in the copper age and whatnot. But you don't know. But you do know that it is a piece of spiritual knowledge that you are born as a direct consequence of all sorts of karma. So you had this particular mother and father, these particular brothers and sisters, these cousins, you're born in this country, or if you are a person with multiple nationalities, then you have karma with these nationalities. And all these people who are in the area where you live, who are in the school where you get educated, and in the friend circle, and all of the events that happen circumstantially, politically, what you are aware about through the television, the films you watch, the books you read, the social media that you use, everything that has happened up until now is somehow your interaction with circumstances that were originating in your karma. And also, we'll say it's all predestined. But the thing of coming to the point is, okay, that being the case, so what? It doesn't really matter if it's good, bad, or indifferent. What matters is, how are you relating to it? How are you using it to your advantage? Because you can consider it as a school, all of it as a school, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant doesn't matter. If you had big traumas or little traumas, doesn't matter. You had traumas. And you had traumas for a reason. Everything can be interpreted to your advantage, because it's entirely up to you what you think about the things that have happened. And wherever there is something that has a strong influence, it has a hold over you, that's a bondage. And you need to try to discern the difference between what that is making you do and be and what you would do and be if it wasn't there. You see? And if you can understand that, if you can feel the difference by observing yourself, I mean, I think when you're in social situations where you get forced to behave in the way that you have been trained to behave, even though it doesn't correspond to who you are and that you don't agree with behaving that way. And as far as possible, you would never do that, but you're doing it. And if you can see the difference between who you are and what you're doing, there you can put your finger on how you have bought into the conditioning, social conditioning. And once you can see it, you're in a position to neutralize it, because your will and its will are in conflict. And that's your inner battle. And you are not going to lose the war or the battle. Well, you might lose a few battles, but you're not planning on losing the war. You are regaining your freedom. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the knowledge that we have is extraordinary. It is not available anywhere else except here. And that there are lots of people who have access to the knowledge, but they don't really know how to use it. And they don't really know what it is. And I think what we're trying to do in EGY is to try to grasp it at a higher level so that we can use it and actually claim our freedom from all of these things that have us in bondage, because we have a right to Jivan Mukti. When we signed up for Raj Yoga, we signed up for Jivan Mukti. And we got given some equipment, and we're working out how to use the equipment, which is called Swadarsan Chakra. Nobody else has this. So it is foreign. It's totally foreign, but we are making ourselves familiar with it so that it is less and less foreign.
Sister Denise, in the beginning, you mentioned that your relationship with why it came about needs to be neutral.
Yes.
And is it right to think that why it came about is because of karmic settlement?
It can be an angle, but I wouldn't make it the only angle.
Mm-hmm.
Because don't forget that we're dealing with predestination. So there is a form of acting teaching, which is called method acting. And the actors are given situations, and they're told, okay, sort out the situation. They're not given lines, they're given a situation. And this corresponds quite well to one of the ways in which Shiv Baba is training us. He's saying, you're actors, you're in a situation, all these things are predestined, and they also are because of karma. And you have to be able to see both at the same time. It's very, very paradoxical. And so you have to take it one at a time and then put them together, separate them, make the whole thing run together. It's like when you learn about the soul, you learn mind, intellect, samskara, but you can't separate them. It's an artificial separation. Now, free will and predestination is also an artificial separation, but we don't get it. Mm-hmm. We have to get it. Just like mind, intellect, samskara is an artificial separation. So everything is predestined, everything is free will. And moment by moment, we have to take it according to what is most relevant for the moment, you see, because everything is absolutely fluid. Now, if you say the reason why something has happened is because of a karmic settlement, you will take yourself out of your power and you will be more predisposed to suffer. But if you say the reason why this thing is there is because it's there, it doesn't do that. It doesn't predispose you to come out of your power and into your suffering. So you have to understand what predisposes you to what, and choose what predisposes you to stay in your power, moment by moment. And this is why we have to study this material. This is not kindergarten stuff. This is very deep, very sophisticated information. And that's why we need to go at it slowly, little by little, so that we can grasp it and go over it many times, because otherwise we lose our ability to hold on to it, because it is so subtle. So we have to understand ourselves very kindly, that I am this very beloved, beautiful, amazing, wonderful being who is in a situation which is fraught with danger, difficulties, and I have been sort of zombified by traumas, and I am in the process of extracting myself from all of these things. So the reason why they're there is because they're exactly the right thing that I need right now in order to gain the particular bit of freedom that is on offer for me at this particular second, you see. And then work with that second, because this second or this circumstance will pass. Some circumstances last longer, some circumstances are very short, but it says very clearly in the Gita, circumstances arise, persist for a while, and then they fall away. And the reason a circumstance has arisen is because it has a very important message for me. It's a teacher. It's full of possibilities, and I need to use whatever's possible for me, whatever I know, whatever I can discern, to extract the maximum richness from this circumstance, regardless of whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. You see. And people don't put that little clause in. They don't say, we don't care whether it's good or bad. They say, we want it to be good, we don't want it to be bad. That's a mistake. Whatever it is useful. It has something for you, for the purpose of making you experienced, for the purpose of making you strong, and for the purpose of making you free. And nothing else has any other purpose. you see. You have to hold on to that, then you can take advantage. Otherwise, you fall back into the tsunami and under the tumbling rocks and stones, and you get drowned, overwhelmed, and knocked out of the game. So don't do that.
So I am in the process of extracting myself. Therefore, because it's in the process, it's not a beautiful sight yet.
Doesn't matter. I mean, you know, I was looking, I'm going to Paris shortly, and in Paris, I very often go to art exhibitions. And there's one in the Louis Vuitton gallery, which is a Basquiat and Andy Warhol. And the two of them are producing art which is not beautiful, but it's reality. And whatever Andy Warhol will create, Basquiat will go and deface it, and that becomes the piece of art. And this is a very amazing expression in the world of art, because artists are usually light years ahead of everybody else. And then you catch up finally, eventually, maybe. But it's a very good way of looking at what our situation is, which they have described. And I think we are using the elements of the knowledge to resolve this situation, which has been presented by the art of Andy Warhol and Basquiat. And that was done in the 90s, you know, a long time ago.
There's a question here, Sister Denise. So how to stop the automatic dissociation response from the drama, which is a result of past trauma?
You gradually practice to extract yourself from the tsunami by using this instrument of the sphere. The drama is a sphere with you in the middle of it, and all this horrible stuff is going on, which is immediately putting you into knee-jerk reaction, and you are taking the opportunity to extract yourself, even for a second, and you do it 5 million times, and you gradually get able to do it. It's practice. And you have to be able to feel the intensity of the emotions. Do not prevent yourself from feeling it. There's nothing wrong with feeling it. But make yourself so able to feel it that it doesn't overwhelm you, because then you're not going to shut down your feelings, you see. Because if you tell yourself you can't stand it and you shut down your feelings, that's stupid. You tell yourself, I can stand it, I am going to feel this, and I'm going to be with it, stay with it, work with it, get through this, and get through to the other side. Mm-hmm. And that is called the power of accommodation. That is called the power of tolerance. Mm-hmm. And we have been given this basket full of 8 powers, which are absolutely essential. Nobody knows how to use them, but we have to start working with them and using them, because they are absolutely essential. Otherwise, we will know all about Raj Yoga but never become Raj Yogis.
There's a comment here on what we just discussed on the learning. Anyway, it's a learning, so useful probably for you to comment if this is accurate. What you see is not necessarily what it really is. We need to think multi-dimensionally in a seemingly one-dimensional existence. Is that an accurate learning from someone? It's a
I don't think so. I don't think so. To me, this question is coming from a person who is in linear thinking. Why I'm saying that is because the person is saying, okay, if you say what I'm seeing is not what's really there, therefore I put multiple things which are all in a long line, and then I'm seeing what's really there. No, you're still in linear thinking. And I'm trying to find a way to articulate this so that a person can grasp what's the difference between linear thinking and spherical thinking. So let me just put it maybe in another way. You see a situation, you can, while I'm saying this, think of a situation that is distressing for you and that happens repeatedly. And you have emotions about that situation, and you have attitudes and thoughts about it. And all of these emotions and thoughts that you have about that situation take the form of distortions. I use computer graphics and things like that. So in computer graphics, you can take a photograph and you can distort it using any number of filters. And people use it all the time. They have it on their cell phones and everything. So you can make it lighter, darker, black and white. You can spin it around, break it up into little boxes, you know, all these different things you can do. Well, this is what you do with situations by adding distortions due to your attitudes and emotions and preconceptions and so on, so that what you're perceiving is your distortions rather than the thing itself. And that's not the same as multiple images by any means. And if you have spherical thinking, it puts you in a position where you can actually put your finger on the distortions that you're making. And linear thinking will enable you to deny that you are distorting it. And I'm trying to get us to break through the denial using this instrument. Not an easy thing. Because for this, you have to have the power to face. There's another of our 8 powers. The power to face is you have to face the fact that you are making something out to be not what it really is, and blaming it for being what you have made it out to be, which it isn't in the first place. That's what's going on. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh.
Yeah. Oh.
Denise, after this session, I'm sure we need to review it, not just once, twice, but as many times, so that we can really go into that kind of a clarity.
Yeah, you know what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to provide a toolbox with competence in using the tools. And you can compare it to an artisan. You know, I just had some work done in this house, and a bathroom was renovated. And that required a mason, an electrician, and a carpenter, tiler, plumber, all these things. So some of the artisans had several skills, but none of them had all the skills, or at least nobody who had all the skills wanted to do it because it's too much hard work. So they wanted to divide it up. So you watch these artisans do what they have to do, and you see the skill with which they work with wood or cement or glass or electricity or water or whatever it happens to be. And you see, these are analogies for what we're doing in our mind with our situation. You see, a few artisans come into an old house which is fallen apart and nothing is working, and there are no straight lines anywhere. All the walls are crooked, all the floors are crooked, the pipes don't work, the electricity is broken. You know, this is our situation. And then they come in there and they fix it up. But they do not, you know, if the plumber finds himself surrounded in sewage, he doesn't get upset. He knows it's his job to deal with it and make sure that the sewage goes where it has to go and not where it doesn't have to go. Mm. And if the electric wires are all broken and bent out of shape and likely to create a fire hazard, he doesn't get upset. He goes into it, rips out the area that has to be ripped out, and he fixes it up, you see. And this is, I think, quite suitable for what we are doing on ourselves. You know, we're pulling out all the junk and sorting it out and cleaning it and fixing it and making everything work. And it doesn't matter how bad it is. It doesn't matter how ugly it is, because the project is we're going to do this job. And I think when we come into Gyan, we don't get it. We think easy Raj Yoga, I'm going to heaven. Thank you very much. God will make get all the work done and I don't have to do anything. Excuse me, not at all. You have to do everything. And God will, you know, direct you, but he's not going to do your work for you. And there's nothing easy about easy Raj Yoga. But if you tell people that, they won't do it. So we have to. But once we're hooked, it doesn't matter that it's not easy, because we just are fascinated by it because it's so amazing, you know. And as you move forward and you get, you know, all of a sudden the lights start working and the water starts flowing and the walls are unlikely to fall down, you start feeling good about the work you've done. And you feel this feeling of accomplishment, this feeling of progress, and you want to really get all the little bits and pieces tweaked so that you have a perfect piece of work at the end of it. And that's what we signed up for, you know, in Raj Yoga.
We didn't know that in the beginning.
No, we didn't. Because
just,
if we knew, we wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Mm. And I think it's also the surprise or the test that you will have to confront when you're ready to move on to the next level. Because we know, like, we are all unfinished art. It's so many unfinished business. And like subconsciously, you know, there is something more that you have to work on or confront within yourself. And sometimes everything seems to be confusing, difficult. There's like a deluge of so many things happening, not just on the outside, but also on the inside. But then at the depth of your mind, inside you say, I'll battle this through, because that's what life is all about, not just on a general level, but more so on a spiritual dimension. There's something I need to do for myself, because when I'm able to do that, there's more meaning and purpose. And because Raja Yoga is what we decided to take on as our world, in some sense. Yeah, just the insight I got listening again to Sister Denise. Because I like to really follow the train of your thought, and can I also see that in myself? Yeah. Thank you.
Um, a question here, Sister Denise. So, does the body help to discover our unhealed traumas?
Our unhealed trauma will become visible in the mind, in the body, in our social environment, professional environment. The body is just another environment. The mind is another environment. The emotions. We have all these environments. And while Avanti was speaking, I was very aware that, you know, you sort out everything and then you arrive at another layer and you have to start all over again at a different level. And this is where the idea of going through 84 births is interesting, because it's like every time you sort out everything and you go to another layer, you're going to the center of the onion, as it were, which is the real pure soul before anything ever happened. So we just keep going through layers and layers, and karmic accounts are settled through the body, through the mind, money, circumstances, relationships, everything possible is an option for karmic accounts to be settled. And every time we settle some kind of karma, we become unburdened, we become unchained, we become more free, more fluid, more in contact with our essential self, and more in our power. And we're in it for the long haul. This is not a sprint, this is a marathon. And it's not 44 kilometers, it's your entire lifetime. And Baba always says, don't die too soon, because you've got a lot of work to do. And don't waste time, because you don't have much time. And so, yeah. So, you know, you can do this practice at many different levels, but my interest is to try and encourage all of us to do it at progressively deeper levels, because it's so much more rewarding. And you really get something out of it, you know, a lot. And it's not about making it pleasant or having, you know, a kind of birthday card experience. No, it's something really deep and real, and the purpose of life. It really gives us purpose.
Sister Denise, there's a comment here. Says, actually, AI is what is fed by human operators. If you chat with them, for instance, on cyclical time by asking clever questions, you can get them to come by themselves to quite Gyani conclusions. So if many BKs were involved in such dialogues with AI, then we could probably influence them instead of being influenced by them.
Well, it depends on the intention of the people who own them. You know, because AI is an instrument that is a technology that's owned by somebody who has an agenda, and they will program it accordingly. And so that's the agenda is mostly to make as much money as possible, without being responsible or being held accountable for damage. That's the problem. But, you know, if it's in the hands of people who are having a very beneficial intention for people, then it can be really good, but it just depends on whose hands it's in. It's a tool. But it's not necessarily in the best of hands. That's what I'm saying.
Sister Denise, in a situation where you have just a moment to decide, and again, I noticed that there is an option that is given. You can either do something or do nothing. However, my experience in many BKs is that it is sometimes interpreted as do nothing is the best option. Just do nothing.
Yeah, but from my angle, it would be freeze or flight. You know, it's one of those things. It's not really taking full responsibility and expecting to be held accountable. It's an avoidance tactic. Mm-hmm. And this is why I feel that it is advantageous to BKs to take the quality of their study and practice of Raj Yoga as far as you can. You know, not everybody will go this deep and this complicated, but you can take it a little further than what it is at the moment.
Hearing you further explaining all that you have already explained in the beginning part of the session actually makes it clearer, you know, as I am listening to you again and again.
Yeah, I think it's quite a good format because you see, when I am writing this stuff, I'm all day and all night thinking, what is this? What is this? What is it all about? And I mean, even the sphere of the drama, it came in a dream, you know. Then I thought, well, other people have dreams which are discoveries, so I can too, you know, why not? And it's pretty good way of doing it. And I have to write it down. And we have to discuss it because it makes it alive and it makes it real, you know. Mm. Otherwise, I don't want to be just a theoretician, you know, and fly over the top of everybody's head, which I am always getting accused of. But I think it's good to get into the nitty-gritty of it. Yeah.
This term, spherical thinking, of course, is a new word for us, but this would be the term Swadershan chakra that Baba is using in the Murli to use this kind of a tool for us.
It is, and when we go into the yantras, which is tomorrow's part, we'll really go into it because you see, the Swadershan chakra is given to us as a flat two-dimensional picture, which I've just seen that you can have it as a three-dimensional sphere. So that's just my way of looking at it. But the thing is how to use it. You know, it's like, I remember the first time in the 1980, we received a direction from Madhaban, get a computer. And that was when PCs first came out. So we said, okay, all right, we'll get a computer. So we got this little Apple computer thing, little box. We didn't know how it works. We didn't know how to make it do anything. We'd turn it on and it would just have a little A and two dots. It was the DOS system, you know, and all it would do is flash on and off. And we have to really know that, well, nearly 50 years of using the computer and all of the development in personal computing and computer graphics and communications technology, all of this incredible development that we have to keep up with, whether we like it or not, is just how life is. in relationship with computers. Everything is computerized. The banks, the washing machine, the car, the everything, you can't live without it. But you get good at it by using it. And if you stop using it, then you get out of touch. So this material that Baba is giving us is technology. And you have to really play with it. Now, my latest interest is fractal geometry, which is an amazing thing, so you should check that out. And it's it corresponds very exactly to the knowledge that Baba is giving. And it's a way of describing nature. And you can start to understand how the mind works with this thing. And maybe it'll help us to start using this technology that Baba is giving us. And that guy who came upon the Mandelbrot set, he got it in a dream. So if he got it in a dream, that means, there are some dreams out there that we can capture, which help us to understand things in a more usable manner, so that the technology is in our hands and we can work with it, rather than just be something that we look at and mystified.
Yeah, fractal geometry. Interesting. We will look at that more. There's a comment here. So may I read it, Sister Denise? Normally, in the name of God, religions have made us assume misconceptions and morality. But I also observe that in BK, the same is done. Baba says, is used a lot in a religious way so that you do what they think you should do. And if you want to keep your freedom, don't be pulled so much towards the center in the name of service. And from Baba says, internal contradiction arises because you feel guilty. Is that a religious mentality?
I think it's a microcosm. I use this word midicosm for the BK world, because ourselves individually is a microcosm of these ideas, and the world generally is the macrocosm. And the BK world is like a midicosm. So everything is there. You've got lots of religious people, you've got lots of all sorts of different kinds of people, but a lot of religious people. And so they will interpret all of this according to who they are. This is normal. This is what we were talking about earlier. And then each and every person who is a student of this knowledge, we all have access to the raw material, the Murli. And however you interpret the Murli, however you work with it, however you deal with the other people who are working with it, whatever position they may hold, this is your circumstance. And so there you have a circumstance, and you make a judgment, or you make a preconception, or you make an evaluation, whatever it is, and then you decide you're going to do whatever you decide you're going to do. And that's you see. And it's not about saying this is like this and that is like that. That's not the point. The point is, here is a circumstance. There you are. You have access to Raj Yoga. You have access to the Murli. You have access to centers. You have access to all kinds of BKs, and every single BK understands the Murli differently. I'm just giving you my take on it. And some people get an antagonistic relationship with it. Everybody gets lots of tests. Everybody gets lots of catastrophes and accidents, and all sorts of things happen. But whatever it is, one circumstance turns into another circumstance. Every circumstance you have to deal with, use the knowledge. And the aim is to become free and clear and understand. So it really doesn't matter whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. That's not the point. The point is, how are you working with it? And what are you doing with it? And are you using it? And I mean, God is evaluating us all the time. It's on continuous assessment. And if we get it right, we get a plus mark. And if we get it wrong, we start again, get a minus mark. And in the end, he says he will give out the results and we will be surprised. So, we wait for that day, but we're still a work in progress. And whatever are our views about whether people are good, bad, or indifferent is, personal. And we cannot be God. God is the only one who is fit to judge. Obviously, we do judge all the time, and yet we have to acknowledge that we are not fit to judge. And so we don't need to do that. That's not what we're here for. And when you find yourself judging, then you have to pull yourself out of that situation and evaluate yourself and say, okay, in what way are you being a Raj Yogi, or are you being something else, or what's going on here? And how do you want to be? And then be that way.
Yeah. So that's also moving forward in a sense. When you decide finally to be who you want to be, then you free yourself from being judging and blaming.
Yeah. That's then you can be authentic. Everybody says, I want to be authentic. Okay, you want to be authentic. This is a way that you can apply to achieve that, you see. I mean, I experiment on myself. And I think all of us can. We use the knowledge on ourselves in our own situation, on our perception of, our relationship in the BK world, our relationship with the Lokik world, our relationship with the Nirvana, we are in this very, very big context, and we're constantly up against having to make decisions and choices. There was the right thought, the right attitude, the right thing to do. And there is no human being who can say, you have to make your own choice, and then God will decide and judge you according to his criteria, which are pretty good. But you cannot speak for God. You cannot say, oh, God wouldn't like this person. You don't know. He might like them very much.
Isn't it that linear thinking as well as circular or spherical thinking are just cultural paradigms taken for granted? What place do you give to science or scientific knowledge in your paradigms?
That's actually not quite a right question. And again, I would say I'm talking to somebody who is in linear thinking. So scientific thought is also linear. And Baba has talked about science, which deals with matter. It does not deal with non-matter, including black holes are still part of matter. And no, it's not my paradigm or cultural norms or something like this. No. There is linear thought, which most people engage in. Linear thought means materialism. It means considering the world of sense perception to be reality, to be the only reality. The material that Baba is telling us does not come from a human source. It does not come from me, but he offers it to us to study. And so we are attempting to study it, but we cannot lump it in with human things because it's not a human thing. And if you're looking at God as a human, then maybe you need to look again. So science is science, cultural norms are cultural norms, and God is God. And, it's not the same thing.
I like to remember that clarification that was given by Sister Denise, that what we are studying here and learning comes from God. And the human capacity to discern, understand it, is like a difference of the whole and the small. So I think an openness to learning is important in the explorations of Gyan and Yoga. An openness to learning, and then to sort of, how will I say, suspend bringing in my Lokic knowledge, because that can contaminate, and then you will doubt what you are learning. It's not to be compartmentalizing things, but because this is new knowledge, I need to keep my intellect so pure. And I think Baba would tell us the Gyan will only be contained in a golden vessel. So to the extent that I have made my intellect golden and pure through Gyan and Yoga, to that extent, I am able to contain also this heavy duty Gyan. For me, reminder to myself, and probably for all of us.
I think you made a very important point about the Gyan can only be held in a golden intellect. And that's a very difficult concept for many people to get their mind around. What is a golden intellect? And there are many things that we do in the process of purification. And when we start, we have first exposure to the knowledge, we understand it in a certain way. We think we've understood the whole thing because it's, again, like fractal geometry. You see the whole thing and it's indefinitely, the resolution is indefinite. You can go as big as you want or as small as you want. You'll always see the whole thing. And there is something that they always tell BKs who are new, and they say there is a story of a mouse who found a piece of turmeric and he thought he was a grocer. So they always tell us that, and then we say, well, what are you talking about? Okay, so the mouse. But no, it's a saying which refers to that you get a little bit of the knowledge which contains everything, and so you think you have everything. And it just seems very extraordinary that you have to sit and study this material every day for an entire lifetime in order to figure out what it is. And even we have 5 years worth of Murlis that we listen to again and again and again, I don't know, 13, 14 times, whatever. But every time you look at it, you get something that you didn't have before. So that it is a continual increase and a refinement of your perception of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that may be the process of the intellect becoming gradually golden, because Gyan really does require spherical thinking, and it absolutely doesn't work with linear thinking. And yet we start off with linear thinking and we gradually, curve the lines a little bit until maybe one day it becomes spherical. So, so this is why we're trying to maybe make it possible for people to move forward quicker. I remember Daddy Janki used to tell me that whatever we had learned in 40 years, that it had been 40 years since Baba had been speaking at that time, you need to be able to learn it in 40 minutes. And so she used to tell me that a teacher is somebody who enables the student to understand what you have learned in a much shorter period of time than it took you to learn that. And so I think we're trying to do something like that with the EGY because, you know, clearly time is passing very fast.
Very fast indeed, Sister Denise. And so our time is up for this session. But, you know, heavy duty as it is, and yet it always leaves me encouraged and full of hope at the end of the session.
Great, great, wonderful. Well, tomorrow, I don't know how, to what extent we'll be able to get through the whole thing. I have a suspicion that we won't, but we will begin with the yantras and get into the Swadarsan chakra and see how we go. And we may go to April as well. And for me, it'll be April in Paris, so I may do it from there. We'll see. But yeah, thank you, all of you, and to everyone.
So thank you to all the translators, and we'll see you again tomorrow. So Sister Denise, may we request you to again lead us to a ending silence.
Thank you. Om Shanti. Again, bring yourself to the consciousness of being a tiny point of light. And you can expand that point of light till it becomes a huge sphere that contains subtle images of everything that happens to you, that has happened, that will happen. And your sphere interacts with and perceives the spheres of others. It's very complex, vast. And go to the point of your essence, the pure, peaceful, powerful, loveful being of light that you are. And let all things merge into that point. And you become simply a shining star. All the traumas and complications, tsunamis and deluges are merged in that point of light. All the wonders and marvels and beauty, all the experiences, all the love, tragedies, the comedies, everything is merged into that point of light. And whenever you want, you emerge it in the eye of your mind and see the wonder of everything, and especially the wonder of you, the self, and the incredible love that is eternally there between you, the self, and God, the Supreme Being.